Is it important for you to know the ending before you start writing your screenplays?
I mean, I would love to know the ending all the time. It would be awesome. Sometimes I have it, and sometimes it changes. I would love to know as many parts of the puzzle as I can. Sometimes you discover it, and it goes another way, and I think that's the beauty of sitting down and chipping things away, because it might make more sense. A lot of times it anchors things, and having an ending where you're concrete about it helps, you know. And so, but then you might fall in love with the characters, and you don't want it to end that way. So, you know, again, trying to be flexible with that is good in my opinion. But knowing the ending would be awesome. And sometimes I have that in my head, and then you play around with the themes, and then you follow the themes, and hopefully you could direct everything towards the end, you know. So that would be my process. I don't know if it works all the time.
But as a rule, it sounds like you don't always have to know the ending before you begin something.
Yeah, I think so. It would be very helpful, and it would just help guide. But I think you have a gist of your story, and then if you have that gist, then you probably could get to the ending, you know, quicker than if you don't have that.
With All Roads to Perla, did you know the ending as you began?
I had an idea of an ending. Now, knowing how to tie it all up, it took me a while. I remember I did have, like, I know how I wanted to end, but how it ended was still up in the air, because there were so many loose parts. I think one of the things that I've found, even with the script in the early stages, is, I don't know if anyone out there has a similar problem, is your storylines. Sometimes you got to wrangle them back and have that fit. And that was the tricky part, you know, and not make it seem so forced and things, and massage it correctly, and still get your message across, or you know, what the story's about. So yeah, when I started, I had an idea what's going to happen, but you know, without giving anything away, it was guided, but the little details was harder, you know.
Maybe help me understand that. So is it almost like if you were going to search for Halloween decorations, but then you go down this rabbit hole and now you're searching fall, you know, you're going, and then you're like, you know what, wait, my original plan was to look for Halloween decorations. Is that what you're talking about, where you have to wrangle it back in?
Yeah, like, okay, let's say, for instance, we had skeletons, we had zombies, and we have ghosts. But only the ghost is at the end. You know, what happened to the skeleton and the zombies without it becoming? Did we forget them at the aisle 14, or you know, like, or did they disappear, or did the ghost take it? You know, so if you knew that the ghost is the one that's there at the end, because you know, in the front yard, then maybe you want the zombies in the back later. You have the elements, but you thought, like, you wanted the ghost to be the one that is the main highlight. I think that's what I'm kind of talking about more of, like, I have an idea. I want the ghost to be the guy out there, but what do I do with the rest of the crew? That.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. And do we really need to know how much and why you've left the skeleton in the aisle 4 or 14, whatever?
That goes back to our discussion of, do you want to handhold more, or do you want to leave it a little bit more obscure, you know? So do we leave a foot out and you see the skeleton foot in aisle 14, or do you want the entire leg out, or do you want the entire body out so you could see that that skeleton got killed at aisle 14, that kind of stuff. So that's what's, I think, what I'm talking about in terms of like, I have an ending, I have a feeling ending. How do I get there with all these other things that are happening? But then sometimes you go, you know what? Actually, the skeleton should be the one that's at the end. So that could happen. But with All Roads to Pearla, I had a feeling what I wanted. My challenge was like, I knew the last page. My challenge was the 5 pages prior to that last page. That kind of thing of, tying things up and getting it right, and how do we get there to make it kind of, dramatic and suspenseful, things like that.